the meanwhile with some introduction. So I can give a very quick overview of any of you, but I will just prefer for you to introduce yourself, what you do, especially in regard of many of you may do many things. So the main focus here will be about Bitcoin education and specifically Bitcoin technical education. There is a lot of potential and effort going on about education in the general terms, or initial orange pilling. But then when you have to scale up, you also have to teach people basically how to code. And the main title of this morning is Build the Coders. So not just build the users or the businessmen, but also the coders, which is probably the challenging part because computer development is in itself something that is not commodity. It's something that has a lot of demand and not much offer. There is some kind of learning curve which is not obvious, and if you have to match that with Bitcoin, specific tools and stack, but also with Bitcoin and ethos and culture, that becomes a very, very small overlap. So scaling it is kind of difficult. So starting from Chris and going that way, who are you and what to do specifically for Bitcoin technical education?
Yeah, hey, my name is 𝐓𝐞𝐥𝐞𝐥𝐞. Since a few months ago, I've had a grant from OpenSats to work on core Lightning plugins and also dev education. And it turns out that there's a lot of overlap between core Lightning plugins and dev education because core Lightning plugins are they're a good way to actually just learn how to code if you don't know how to code, because you can write them in any language, so you can use any language as a starting point. And there is just a simple server, the library will do everything for you, and so to get a plugin that works and does something somewhat interesting is actually not very much code. And importantly, you don't have to modify the core Lightning code to change the behavior of your node and get it to do something custom. With a plugin, you can have a separate repo that you can just kind of use as a playground. And so I think it's an extremely useful tool for not only getting people into Bitcoin Lightning dev, but also training people in general dev education, which I think is really important because there's a lot of Bitcoiners out there who would like to learn how to become developers, but they don't know where to start. And so that's what I take as kind of my mission, is kind of taking those people who aren't sure what the next step is and just sort of showing them one path that they can take. And yeah, just generally, we need to decentralize knowledge in Bitcoin, because if we don't do that, Bitcoin will become centralized with the people who have the knowledge. And so I think training everybody to be devs insofar as this is possible is really important to Bitcoin's success.
Hey, my name is Roxy. I'm the founder of Bitcoin and the Sovereign University, which is basically a Bitcoin university, open source in multiple languages. To try to help dev, what I really focus on is giving them as much courses, Lightning tutorials, RGB resources, so they can keep digging and digging. And the issue I had found with the educational space in Bitcoin is that it's really shattered with many websites, libraries, many courses, some in some language, others not. And I thought that if we can concentrate that information, make it centralized, then distribute the knowledge to more people in a more efficient way. So people can really learn from the really basics of Bitcoin 101, also in economics, all the way to being like a dev, RGB dev, Lightning dev. And so it gets two purposes. The first one is like for coders that get into the Bitcoin space, they need the ethics of Bitcoin, they need to understand what is this industry, so they need all the basic courses for them to then fit in a Bitcoin company with the skills they already have. And at the same time, the people that got into Bitcoin but doesn't know how to skill or to code can slowly get the necessary skills to join a Bitcoin company. So it's both in one. And to give some example, for example, following our courses, we've set up, someone set up the first Lightning node of Benin or Togo. So because everything is free and open source and in multiple languages, communities around the world are using our formation to bootstrap their communities and improve their skills, and now trying to teach other developers Bitcoin courses without us being involved whatsoever. We just provide the resources for free, and they take the resources and use it in their own local community to form their own dev. So yeah, I guess it's a centralization of knowledge for distributed better distribution.
Hi everyone, I'm Salvatore, one of the co-founder of 𝐕𝐵𝐼. We co-founded 𝐕𝐵𝐼 3.5 years ago. It's a student team organization inside the Polytechnic of Turin. It is a high technical university that has a goal to build engineering. And back in this day, me, Giorgio, and Gabriele, we thought that no one was talking about Bitcoin, and there were no signals, but only noise. And our goal in that day was to break this path and talk about Bitcoin and build developers, build Bitcoiners. But I think today I will be the black sheep because our idea, our method is to put first pillar the value that the tech provides and not the tech itself, because we think that if we talk at the beginning of the technology and not about the value that are behind, the students have a cognitive path that go in a direction that is not useful for the Bitcoin spreading, for the Bitcoin adoption. Because you might think, oh, this is a new technology, Bitcoin opened that market, so there will be another technology that can flip Bitcoin. And it's the classical path of all the technology that we have. But Bitcoin is not only a technology. Satoshi invented a social consensus to resolve the general Byzantine problem. So the social part is the most important. With this social part, we can truly orange peel the person that we have in front, and after that, he teach himself because he go in the rabbit hole, and after that, the technology part is assured. So this is our approach in general, and we think that works because we were just three, and now we are more than almost 100. So that's it.
With some cool announcement that we may give in the next months about some cool Bitcoin thing in the universe.
I don't know if I have the permission to say it.
Probably no, we will. Just teasing. Okay. Jimmy?
Yeah, I've been educating people in these classes that I've run. I think I've taught somewhere around 700 or 800 people at this point. But basically, I have a 2-day course where you learn everything that you need to know at least some of the base layer and start productively coding. I've been doing this for 6 years now, and yeah, I've written a book based on a programming that code. I haven't heard of it. But yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Hi, my name's Harsh. I'm creator of the 𝐕𝐶𝐻 app. It's a gamified Bitcoin and education app, sort of like Duolingo with like staff rewards. And I think it's important that while we do build the builders, it's important that these builders also understand why they are in Bitcoin in the first place, just so they also understand and they contribute to more open source projects and not necessarily in it because they got hired by some company here for a few years and then they leave for another job.
Thank you. So, getting back to you, Chris, and I will give you the mic immediately. You told us about the 𝐒𝐶 Lightning plugin education path that you will also follow up on tomorrow afternoon. So everybody, there will be some workshop tomorrow afternoon. One will be by Chris about Lightning plugins. The other will be by Jimmy, a new workshop about Tuple. Later maybe we will expand a little bit about that. But somebody in the room may recognize you also for running the LARP game, first invented by Lisa. So that's an interesting thing because in a way it was just a way to have fun, and it was very funny. We had a lot of laughs. But it was also an ambitious attempt to actually fit in the game very technical things. In a way, it was not oversimplified. It was kind of hard. Even just the network topology was getting somebody killed with cables and stuff. So, what do you think about this kind of? I mean, did you enjoy it? Do you plan to evolve it and to bring it forward?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I ran a LARP game yesterday, and this is a new development because basically the inventor of the LARP game, 𝐕𝐨𝐮𝐜𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, was not able to be here, and so she sort of handed it off to me so that I could do it today. And she hopes to kind of have lots of people running LARPs. She's been, up until the moment, just the only one running it. And as you mentioned, you know, it manages to ride the line between, being faithful to the Bitcoin protocol while not overcomplicating things. So, and you know, people who are, it's really just an amazing tool for bringing anybody deeper into Bitcoin, because like even people who've never heard of Bitcoin could join the LARP and have a lot of fun and basically come away with a general high-level understanding of how Bitcoin works, which is so important in my opinion. You know, a lot of people, most people who, even people who come to like Bitcoin meetups are, you know, altcoiners. You know, they don't really understand what sets Bitcoin apart from you know these other projects. And once you kind of, you know, you do the LARP and you kind of act out the Bitcoin protocol, you really get a sense for, oh, like this is why Bitcoin works, and you know, like this is, you know, it was designed with very specific things for very important reasons. And if you get rid of those things or if you change them, then you know, it doesn't work as well. Actually, the LARP gets kind of chaotic, as you saw. You know, there's strings and there's transactions flying everywhere, and you have your connection, you know, backlog. You have messages coming in from your peers, and you're over here like copying transactions, and you look over there and you're like, oh my god, I have like 5 messages that I haven't fielded, you know, and you know, this is how the Bitcoin protocol really is. You know, we don't see it because Bitcoin Core has been well engineered for over a decade to handle all this stuff. But you see how much of a chaotic mess it could be. You know, if the software isn't written well. But yeah, you know, definitely. You know, talk to Lisa about her plans. But from what I understand, so. There's a fundraiser right now on 𝐒𝐲𝐻 to fund the first 50 LARP kits, and right now the LARP, which is more or less like a 30-person game, the kits are costing Lisa about $550 each for all of the supplies, which sounds like a lot, but again, it's a 30-person game, and it's something that you can just kind of do over and over again with your meetup group or with at conferences or whatever. So yeah, we would, and I've been helping Lisa a bit on that project, sourcing things and designing things, and we would really appreciate it if you guys could support us on that. And I think that answers your whole question.
Thank you. Proxy, this is a discussion we also had for many reasons in the last weeks, and I would like for you to expand it in front of the audience because I think it's interesting. Language barriers. So many people cannot get the first orange pill because they just don't get the language. Even the education efforts in El Salvador were in the schools were somehow made harder for foreigners because most of the people there were just speaking Spanish and most of the international Bitcoiners were not speaking Spanish. So there is this language barrier. In general, the solution to bring Bitcoin content in the local language is a solution, and in that regard, your effort is astonishing because you did so many languages, you are covering so many languages that you are engineering. But my doubt is that when you come from general engineering to development, actually it's basically impossible for a developer to be a developer without accessing English documentation, English standards, English terms. So at this point, instead of localizing, maybe you just want to, I don't know, add English courses before the development courses. So tell me, give us your take about that.
Yeah, so going into 200 languages for Bitcoin is necessary, simply because learning a new language is really hard. Learning Bitcoin is really hard. If you compound those two, it gets impossible for most people on Earth. So we should not impose the fact to learn a new language to everyone. It's also good to translate everything at a lower level, simply because they don't have to spend time recreating the courses we already have. Let's say we have a really good Bitcoin 101, we have a really good Australian economics introduction. Why would every community in the world recreate the same course? It makes absolutely no sense. It's a waste of time, energy, and everything. So we can just translate that in a lot of languages using a large AI or large language model, and then have the local community review it. So we can scale in a really efficient way by lowering drastically the cost of creating content for new communities. So right now the university is in Japanese, Arabic, Swahili, all the languages of Europe, and we can just keep adding language because it takes no effort. On your side, I did agree with you after a long discussion that we should not translate really advanced Bitcoin content in every language, even though we could. But it's more an ethical question of like, if we want to push the frontiers of political discussion, game theory, logic, Australian economics, Lightning, dev, people need to speak the same language, and at that stage we don't yet have a perfect solution. So if we get to a meetup like that and people cannot speak English, it's going to be way harder to push the new frontiers of development. So you're right, at the end, the university, when we get to a really high level, will just not translate anymore to force people to learn English. And if it's a necessary step to just learn English for some time to keep progressing in that world, then it could be a good thing for the kind of ecosystem as a whole.
Thank you. So we were talking about universities, students groups. What is the relationship? How is your personal experience about the relationship with the academic world? There have been some efforts at the beginning from Bitcoiners to become somehow legitimized by the academic world. I remember the University of Cyprus doing the first Bitcoin university with Antonopoulos. But then when the shitcoin, when the crypto explosion started, the Scambrium explosion, as Wittgenstein called it, started, the academic world seemed to basically switch from, no, this is too much, this is too exotic, too alien for us, into, so skepticism, extreme skepticism, into extreme gullible, like following any kind of stupid trend. So they started to do courses on ICOs, courses on private blockchains, any kind of empty hype. And we also have some university professors launching their own shitcoins, famous cases in Italy as well. So give us your experience about the relationship with the academic world in Turin. Of course, you cannot say anything bad about the professors there, but very in general, has there been any resistance, or has it been a welcoming environment? What were the main points of contention? Political, values, or what?
Okay, I think I can speak fully here, and I hope that no one will take no
This is not broadcasted, it's just recorded for internal use, so we will just blackmail you after.
Okay, so the idea behind Bitcoin was is to act as a training horse beside the field system, because the university are the place where, and that's a phrase that every professor says inside the university. In this classroom there will be a ruling class the next decade, but no one talk about what kind of society there is behind the ruling class that will coordinate the society. So there is no choice, and we were thinking just to, and that's what we do, and we've done, to spread a single signal that is, hey, there is a choice that no one talk about. You don't need to to live the life of the monks. And you can make a choice. And that's what we are providing. Aside from that, with academic part, we just ignore them because if someone wants to listen, they came to us. That's the case of the two professors that are part of 𝐕𝐵𝐿ito. But the point is, we don't need the academic because they are corrupt. Their view is to spread, to continue to build the field system. So our point of view is just students, hey, it's a choice, you can make it. Oh, you want, okay, but you know now that there is this choice. And that's our point. And I think that continuing to spread this signal, we can also bring to our part of the academic, but we don't need it because the future are the students that are listening and not the professors that are teaching. So we focus on that.
Thank you. Academic drawing course. Jimmy, your course and book is interesting. Is also a little bit an exception because there is a lot of practical stuff, hands-on that students can try to do, and there is also a very complete introduction to the math of basically Phoenix fields and elliptic curve Phoenix field. Usually, when you see a Bitcoin course, it's either a very practical, hands-on education on how to use the tools that we have, or you go very abstract and you do abstract cryptography, but then it's very hard to get back to the actual practice. You basically try to merge the two things. What is, in your opinion, in your experience, the main challenge to give a complete Bitcoin education? What are the lessons that you learn, the things that you improved, and the main obstacles that you still see?
Yeah, the reason why I created the course in the first place was because I was frustrated. Right? When I started coding with Bitcoin stuff in 2013, there just weren't that many good resources. I'm like, what is this thing? And it would take me like a few days just to learn like one concept that I didn't know before, and like putting it all together and just trying to figure out how to do something was actually quite difficult. And it's to some degree a little bit less difficult now, but it's still pretty difficult. And there tends to be sort of like a lot of LARPing, right? Like people think that they know stuff that they haven't coded or something like that, and you get a lot of influencers on YouTube and so on that sound good, right? Like they know all the marketing buzzwords and have some, I guess, level of conceptual understanding, but they don't really understand. And that's the big thing that I've realized about this whole space, and really almost anything, all fields of knowledge, is that it's very easy to sound like you know something, but when it gets down to actually building it, not that many people sound.
Human ChatGPT, basically.
Yeah. There's sort of like a debasement of doing, right? Because there's a lot of sort of money to be made, I guess, as an influencer or something like that. So, I tried to make my course and the stuff that I teach very practical and make people actually code, because ultimately, if you don't know how to code it, then you don't actually know it. And so, one of the scholarship winners from a while back, one of the things that he wrote to the person that sponsored him was, I was a computer science major, I thought I knew about Bitcoin and all this other stuff, and then I took your course and immediately I knew that I didn't know anything, right? And that's sort of the humility that you need for a lot of people. The problem right now is that there are lots of people that like to talk in the abstract, and basically talk out of their ass and act like they know all kinds of stuff when they really don't. And there isn't that humility to actually go out and try to build stuff. It's instead just sort of, oh, you know, have you heard about this, and have you heard about that, and not really actually doing stuff. And that's not just Bitcoin. It's in almost anything. Like, talk to anybody about quantum. Like, nobody understands quantum, and everyone has an opinion on it. It's you know, as they say, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them. So it's kind of like that with Bitcoin too, and you know, ultimately the problem that I see in education is that, you know, instead of actually learning how to do things, people would rather just sort of like LARP and talk about it. And you know, I can kind of see why, because actually doing it is hard. It's a lot of work, and it requires a lot of like sitting down and doing stuff. But you know, I mean, that's kind of where we are. We're in a fiat society where sort of LARPing is rewarded. So that's what it's like.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just to piggyback off that, the way that I got my start teaching people, well, besides taking Jimmy's class in 2018, which is great, highly recommended, by the way. Yeah, oh yeah.
And there's a bunch of people from El Salvador that are also taking it there too. So yeah, there's a decent number of former students here.
Yeah, it's definitely Bitcoin education OG right here. But yeah, the way that I got my start was I did a workshop at BC++ in Austin in April about Core Lightning plugins, and I noticed that even though it was a dev-focused conference, and there were workshops, that a lot of the workshops were this sort of like made for YouTube thing where the person would make a slideshow and they would explain how you might go about doing a thing, you know, thing X, you know, and then everybody in the audience is just sitting there watching. And I was like, you know, I wish they would just have people do something, right? Just pull out your laptop. I was like, I went to a few of the workshops and I was like, so when am I going to pull out my laptop and like write some code? And so, so for my workshop, I did that. I just was like, okay, we're all like, raise your hand if you have a laptop. You are doing the workshop. You are writing code today. And it's like, even if you just have people just like copy and paste stuff, it's a world of difference between doing that and just watching somebody else do it. Or watching somebody else talk about it.
So, somehow emotionally, it's satisfactory to watch someone else do it. Like there's this phenomenon of like watching other people play video games or something like that, and you get the same dopamine hit as if you're doing it yourself, but you're obviously not doing it. I suspect this is true of sports as well. Like where watching someone else score a goal is as satisfying as you doing it yourself or something like that.
You're describing porn too, basically.
Yeah. It's a very fiat thing, right? To sort of like take credit for like other people doing something, which is very strange, but it's very common in the fiat world. I'm so proud of what like Chris and Lisa are doing, and you know, I mean, even Jan and many others that have actually gone through my course and have, you know, provided some level of education for other people, because they're the ones actually doing the work, and I encourage everybody to actually code, right? Like it's crazy how many people talk about this stuff and how few of them actually try to code it, which to me is again LARPing, influencer peddling, maybe affinity scamming, whatever it is. It's like go do stuff instead.
So follow-up question, like where would you send them? Like they do the course from you and then they start helping open source project, they start to build their own plugin, it's called Lightning. Do they apply to companies? Like what would be the advice for the students?
Yeah, I mean, I spent like the last hour of my 2-day course just talking exactly about this. Here are the next steps. Here's some stuff that you can go learn on your own, right? HD wallets, here's the bit. Go look at it. Go implement it in code, right? Like go see if you can read a spec and implement it on your own. Doesn't have to be original, just so you can understand it, right? Like, and that here's a bunch of different projects that you can do. Here are some open source projects that you can go contribute to, or at least like document or write tests for it. Just all that, like, or even just be welcoming to new people that are coming in and saying, hey, I'm interested in contributing to this open source project. Whatever it is, like, just get your foot in the door in a lot of these things. You can also apply to companies. You can, and I have whole strategies on how to do that, including, going to conferences like this and how to approach people, and making sure that you meet them multiple times because they're not going to remember you if you just meet them once, stuff like that. And that's what my course, at least originally, was about, was to help developers get into this space, because bootstrapping your career in a space like this it's not that easy. So, and I had a particular path, and I tried to take the learnings from that and help people there too.
Yeah, and totally agreed. And just to piggyback on that, like the way that the one thing that really helped me get started in open source development is like totally different from closed source development. Like closed source development, like you get a bunch of credentials and then you do a bunch of interviews and then somebody hires you and then you work on stuff that crushes your soul. In open source, it's the opposite. Like you you have to be a lot more sort of self-managed. For me, it was really important to just create some space, create like an hour of space every day and just write code, every day. And if you don't know how to write code, just test code, right? Like just use code that other people are writing and give them feedback. Like this is like priceless. Like developers, a lot of developers in the Bitcoin space they're just lonely, right? They're just developing stuff that like nobody's using and they just want somebody else to like take a look at it and tell them what they think. Like, just honest feedback, whether it's criticism or whether it's, praise or appreciation, any of that is helpful. But, it's just important, like just pick one project, some piece of software that you actually use, and just start trying to find problems with it and report the problems on GitHub. It's very easy to make a GitHub account and just start reporting issues. The more details you can put in the issues, the better. And then, eventually, once you feel comfortable building and testing the code, there's usually if it's a big enough project, there's usually labels on the issues, and you can pick the ones that say good first issue. And then, people in this space are pretty welcoming. And if you get stuck on something, people will usually help you out. You have to be kind of assertive. You have to get their attention and keep bugging them until they help you. But usually they're very happy to help.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that. I think what Jimmy and Chris said is very important, is that people are not building, and I think one of the root causes for that is that they just don't understand why they're in Bitcoin yet, right? And people also need to really understand why they should contribute to open source and why they should develop and why they should be in the space. And there are a couple of solutions or a couple of ways for them to get assimilated. They might get orange pilled while they work, but I believe that in the future, as the space expands, such people are not going to have such high intent anymore, right? So what are some ways to get yourself self-educated? One, buy some books. I think Jimmy has written some great books. His latest book, Fiat Owns Everything, is a fantastic book. And if you don't want to go through the book route, there are some YouTube videos. And if you don't want to go through that route, there are great apps out there, learning apps, kind of like what I'm building. But it's very important for developers to understand why Bitcoin exists in the first place and why we want Bitcoin to win. I was having dinner with Chris yesterday, and he's like, I'm just building so Bitcoin can win, and not many developers can say this.
I think touch what I was saying before. So we need to make the coders to understand the value and the tech.
There is an engineering challenge there. Salvatore, you were saying?
No, that he was saying what I was saying before, that we need to put at first the value behind the tag. Otherwise, we just have monkey coders that doesn't know what they're bidding, why they're bidding, what they're bidding. Why is the most important question, and the other question about.
Yeah, and if you're going to be a monkey coder, there's a lot of altcoins that will pay you to do that. So, and this is kind of the problem too, is that there are so many altcoin foundations and stuff like that that are flush with ICO money. Not so much anymore, but there used to be, and there's still a significant budget for a lot of them. And if you are a mercenary, if you just want to get paid, you can go to a lot of these and, you know, get a couple $1 million and do your own project and, you know, make some useless app for EOS or something like that. And you know, if you don't have direction, if you don't have purpose, that's kind of where you're going to end up as a developer. And in a sense, it's kind of sad, but that's where a lot of people are.
And that's my point. Our purpose is more valuable than this. So we need to still focus on each course.
I should add that if you're feeling directionless but you want to contribute, a great way to get started, of course, is to simply pay somebody like Jimmy, who has a Bitcoin education business, or Base 58, or there's a number of other companies that offer classes. And you know, like that can sometimes, when you're feeling unfocused and sort of unsure where to go next, that's a great way to do it. And you know, actually, I was talking to Jimmy a couple days ago, and he mentioned that a lot of people are just they're looking for coaching even more than just like education, right? And I think you know, just taking the class can be a fantastic way to get that.
So I think that, I mean, the point that you touched, especially in the last round, is basically the trade-off between why and how. So if you go too much into the why, into the philosophical realm, you explain a lot of that, but then you don't do stuff, you basically end up LARPing or becoming an influencer, and you don't do stuff, and that's a problem. The symmetrical problem that you touched upon is that if you just do stuff without understanding why you're doing, you may become, I would say, even a danger, because a knowledgeable developer that is completely outside of the Bitcoin ethos can actually try and effectively change Bitcoin for the worse, while a non-developer can do way less damage. So there is a trade-off between these kind of two forces, and we kind of have to stay in between. And Chris before touched into another trade-off, which is as a developer, when you start doing and building, the most psychologically satisfying thing will be to create a new thing, to start from scratch, to do something new, like maybe reinvent protocols. But then the actual useful thing that you can do is to take another developer that maybe is a shitty developer, is just starting, and helping correcting broken stuff, fixing and doing maintenance basically, and doing improvement, gradual improvement, which is way more frustrating. So basically we have to dance between a lot of different trade-offs, and maybe good thing would be for everybody to actually attack one side of the trade, which there's also the academic part, like, do we want to ignore the fiat war, or we want to try to contaminate it and take it over and try a hostile takeover? So there are a lot of different extremes that we may dance between, right?
Yeah, there's like a needle that you have to thread, right? Because like you said, it's very easy to sort of like miss an aspect of Bitcoin and essentially go astray somewhere. You're just sort of like a coder, you might end up in altcoins because it pays better. Or if you ignore the technical, then you end up being sort of like, you know, the marketing influencer that like LARPs are knowing whatever, but they don't. So it is a difficult needle to thread, and my perspective on that is, you know, you kind of need to know about Bitcoin, like, and it's going to take a few years. There's a lot of people that think, okay, like education sort of happens magically, right? Like, if you have enough Bitcoin accepted here stickers in a city, that's enough to get people to really on board with Bitcoin. And next thing you know, they're contributing to Bitcoin Core or something. That's not how it works. It like each person needs to actually put in the hours, like put in the work, and that's you know, it's not like a new, you know, shoe or something where, you know, all it takes is somebody to like want it or something like that. It's actually a very difficult thing to understand, and it requires a lot of time, effort, and stuff like that. And that's not something that we talk about very much. It's, oh, we need to get up the adoption, so we'll do like some mass marketing thing, and that's the altcoin money. This is why like crypto.com like sponsors the UFC and stuff like that. It doesn't work. The way you get real Bitcoiners is by having them really understand that it's great money, right? They need to understand the economic aspect of it. They need to understand the technical aspect of it. It's actually decentralized, and it is for all of these reasons, and this is how the whole thing works. And you know, threading that needle requires really a lot more on the part of the person learning, and that's not something people want to hear. They just want to be like, I want to like just teach me 15 minutes, right? Like, and you know, I want to be a core contributor. How hard can it be, right?
Also, a really important thing that now is possible that wasn't before is the Bitcoin communities around the world that have really grown over the years. So, like you were mentioning, the mentoring aspect of people getting lost, getting in their own room and not having that connection and feeling lost, and then they lose interest in the project and the project die. Today there is like BTC map / communities. There is like hundreds and hundreds of communities in Europe, expanding everywhere in the world. So you can simply like go to those meetups that happen regularly, talk to people that have the same culture, the same language as you, and they can help you on your project. So even though you are alone, there is actually Bitcoiners in every city. You just need to connect them. And on the following point about project being started and lost in academic, I think open source is going to just solve that, because now, let's say you have a good project and you cannot fundraise money and you have to stop. Either you open source the project and someone can use it again and can improve on it, or you just keep it closed source and it's lost time because of how the world is. And I feel like if we move more to, like in Bitcoin we do it a lot, but in general, if we really move heavily into open source, people that want to start a project don't start from zero, and people that start don't stop and go back to zero, and we can have like increasing launch of good projects and really finish the good ideas, because more people work through it over time.
Let me contrast, before I praise you for the automation of language translation and the content organization, let me talk about Wisr a little bit, because yesterday we were thinking about the way you are approaching artisanal quality of the gamification of the course versus industrial scalability. That's another interesting trade-off. Like you can try to reach the largest number of people effectively and really scale up, or you can really put a lot of effort into make the specific quality with a human touch, with some kind of creative touch. So that's another hard choice you have to make, right? Including in the Wisr app, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think like using AI to generate content and to teach people about Bitcoin through, say, like OpenAI is fundamentally flawed. And I think there are people in the space that are building a Bitcoin native AI. Alex Kovetsky is building Spirit of Satoshi. And I believe that creating great content and really teaching people how and why Bitcoin matters should be taught the right way, right? Like I only understood Bitcoin after reading some Chinese books, reading Bitcoin Standard, spending all this time, and now I understand some of the nuances. I'm not a developer, but I do understand some of the concepts that they are talking about, and I think it's important for people to understand these concepts, because when they do become a core developer, or when they do want to work in Bitcoin, they need to create good code. They should not just be here in the space of just being here for the hype and for the buzzwords. I think like you need to really understand why we are here for Bitcoin and why Bitcoin needs to win, and the only way to do that is through good education, and education that really resonates. So what I'm doing is I'm going for the masses. I'm creating a gamified education approach, Duolingo, EarnSats, bite-sized education, easy to read in like multiple different languages. Yeah, that is one route. The other route is for people that have high intent, that want to be in the space. Read a book. You'll be surprised with the number of people that cannot even finish a damn book. And the third option is get lost in trade. And maybe you end up working for some shitcoin company. But the best approach is to read a book. And if not, my app is always as backup.
Yeah, I want to add that in Bitcoin, it's important that we decentralize education. And I think I was talking to you, Rich, about this earlier. Like in fiat education, you have sort of the people who are responsible for education. and you have the people who are responsible for building things, and you have the people who are responsible, you have like, kids who are planning or whatever. And everybody has like a role, and that's the only thing that they do. But in Bitcoin, things are peer-to-peer, things are decentralized, and it's really important that everybody play all of the roles. There's a really important book that I highly recommend to all of you called Social Architecture. It's by a guy named Peter Hitchens, who was a developer. He founded the 𝐓𝐞𝐥𝐞𝐫 community. He has a lot of great thoughts about how to form an online community of developers, especially. And he has this learn, work, play, teach model. And it's really important that everybody do all of these things. In Bitcoin, a lot of times you have these kind of silos of people who are just kind of building things, but they're not documenting what they're doing, they're not explaining what they're doing, they're not teaching people how to do what they're doing. And it can be really intimidating to try to get into Bitcoin development because it seems like these people are writing perfect software, and anybody who is inexperienced and trying to learn how to get into it sees this kind of like smooth wall, and there's nothing to like grab onto because everything seems perfect, and it seems like if you change it, that you're going to mess it up. And so, people who are leading software projects, one of the ideas that Hitchens has is this idea of, just merge it, just make something, just make something that's like imperfect. I mean, so obviously Bitcoin core consensus code is not like this, because it has to be more or less perfect. But anything that sort of is outside of that, it can be ugly, it can have bugs, and that actually encourages more community participation. And it provides an opportunity for mentorship, it provides an opportunity for, good first issues, things like this. Apps like this are also very important, like the gamification. I think it's awesome that we can have gamifying the experience is probably like the easiest way to get people started. But just like getting people into probably for learning Bitcoin concepts, that's probably the best thing. But for development, you just want to have a hands-on thing that's just you're touching actual code.
Well, we're talking about building the builders, right? Or getting more developers in there. And this is something that I've been thinking for a long time. The thing that's actually kind of shocked me in the last 6 years is how few people actually want to do the work, right? I've had lots of scholarships available for my class. My class is expensive, but you get a scholarship, it's essentially free. You would not believe how few people actually apply for free scholarships. Why? Because it's 2 days of intense work, right? It's 2 days of constant coding. It's time you have to take out. A lot of people just don't want to do it. So what I'm finding is that they're kind of used to the fiat economy where you just sort of you can coast for a long time and sort of stay in your role or whatever. It's actually kind of rare to find people with passion and real desire, not just LARPing on Twitter and saying, I want to be this or that, actually showing some proof of work, right? Doing actual work. And that to me has been the shocking thing. I always thought, I feel very strongly about doing this, so therefore other people would. Most people don't. And that is something that I wish would change. But I think it's sort of like a deep-seated fiat rot that's been, sort of festered over 12 years of schooling or 16 years of schooling or however many years people go. And it really requires some, if we want more builders, it's going to require almost like a cultural change. And hopefully we can do that within Bitcoin.
I want to connect your answer to your, and I think that the problem of this is that we, in this society, human, is not more habituated to make sacrifice. And we can imitating the fiat system, and it's a question, putting gamification in the education, because is a lifetime preference mechanism. Instead, I think we need, in fact, you say we need a cultural change, and that's I believe that we need to spread archetypal hero journey that could give value at the sacrifice. So I think that the cheat is to make the very person that we are educating to point the attention to an higher value, that is the mission that we are talking, is great, etc. And with this in mind, he can justify the sacrifice that is taking 2 days of course and not just larping on Twitch. So,
the point of gamification is to make it fun for students to learn. For example, 𝐁𝐴, the game that you have there, it's a really good example. Immediately, even if he doesn't care about Bitcoin, he's going to try, he's going to download, he's going to use it, and then we can use the game to basically say, hey, to get to that point, this is all the steps of like the Bitcoin protocol and how it works. So you basically use gamification to get them to the end point, and indeed, in the flight world, people need an objective and saying, hey, you're going to build a video game, and it's going to be used like this. It's a great way for them to be more engaged and make it like easier for them to apply. Sure, there's a big cultural change that is needed, but having video game as the tool for them to be entertained is a great way. Or it's like, we premiere Bitcoin, they're sending invoices in a chat with 45 person. It makes no sense, it's a really bad UX. What you could do, we create like a puzzle, and if every student pays the LLU withdraw, then like the image show up, and when everyone has paid, the image is completed. Easy, interactive way for students to learn. This is what I call gamification, not just having like a notification, like something deeper, and try to program the game for making education.
Fundamentally what we're doing is we're retraining people from a fiat mindset to a Bitcoin mindset. And as you mentioned, I think you mentioned that it's sort of a hero's journey, right? Did you say it's kind of a hero's journey? I might have missed. Yeah, okay. So I totally agree. And so what that basically is it's easy, you know, and then it's a little bit harder, and then you can teach people who are on the easy step, and then it's a little bit harder, and you can teach people on the step before that. And as you progress, it becomes less sort of pre-formulated, and it turns into something that you're driving yourself and you're taking responsibility for. So yeah, like I feel like the ideal Bitcoin education system or protocol is this kind of this kind of progression from no responsibility to, you know, total sovereignty. You know, where you're like basically a protocol dev, and you understand you have a totally reproducible system and you trust no one.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that like cultural shift is not like an on and off switch. I think there is progression, and it's kind of like quitting cigarettes, right? Like you reduce the number of cigarettes you smoke, and you put on a nicotine patch, and you go slowly step by step. So I think gamification is key because we're so engaged in this fiat mindset that we need, because these guys and girls are on TikTok, Instagram, getting their financial news from there, getting brainwashed over there. We need the way that they are used to and educate them with the right information, and hopefully through gamification, then they can kind of like self-discover Bitcoin in the way that resonates with them.
That's another kind of Trojan horse in a way. There's another duality between the idea that we want mass adoption, so we want to scale to spread out, or we also want some degree of purity. We want to spread out a different message, not the same, not pander to the same mentality. So it's the difference between the Bitcoin is for remnant kind of thinking, which is right, and we want to scale Bitcoin mentality, which is also right, and we have to stay in between. So indeed, gamification is a very interesting territory because it may be just pandering to a fiat item preference mentality, but it's also a very natural and traditional way to turn knowledge into some kind of fairy tale or game or percourse. Let's start toward the last point, and then we will take a couple of questions, not much more from the audience. Jimmy, you say your courses are sustained by scholarship, but they are expensive. So let's talk about business models. One of the problems I think there may be in the intersection between education and the open source ethos and mentality is that in the open source movement we are used to think that to tell it like Stallman, information must be free in all senses. So you don't charge, you don't use patents, you don't do proprietary stuff, but education is a work that requires some degree of specialization, some degree of logistical cost. Somebody has to put actual money to make education happen. And also the free aspect of education can also take back incentives to take it seriously. If you have something free thrown at you, it's basically the basement in a way. So there is a tension between the open source movement mentality and the fact to actually do education as a business. To Bitcoiners, if you sell them a piece of hardware, they understand they're buying the hardware. But if you sell a course, so many times it's like, oh, this is just a scam because you're asking for money to educate people. So how do you face this other kind of interesting challenge?
Yeah, so I'll say first of all my stuff is pretty much open source, right? The course that I teach, the exercises are in a GitHub repo on my GitHub. You can go and download it and do it yourself if you're so motivated. My book, Programming Bitcoin, is again open source. You can go to GitHub, download it, read it, go through it. You don't have to pay me a cent if you don't want to. What I found, though, is that for a lot of people, they want to pay me not because I have the knowledge per se, but because, like Chris was saying, because I can help them course correct. So you can struggle with something, and then if there's a good coach there, then they can just be kind of like, hey, you just need to do X and Y, and it'll improve it. That's the whole role of a coach. And that's what people would rather pay me for. It's somebody that's sort of making them do stuff. And that, I think, is actually valuable, and I charge a lot of money for it, and I don't apologize about that. I mean, tons of people on Twitter have complained about the cost of my course or whatever, but I don't care. These are not the people that are paying me, and if they don't find value, that's fine. There are plenty of people that do, and those are the people that pay me. Like monetarily, these courses work out very well, I think, for everybody, because if you do get into the space and you get paid a salary, I mean, especially as a dev, it more than makes up for, whatever cost that you paid me. One quick story on that, there was a guy that took my course in 2018, and he kind of went off on the shitcoin side, and he did a hackathon for EOS, and he told me afterwards it was based on everything that I learned from your course, and the hackathon gave them his team of $400,000, $500,000. I was like, I guess that was a pretty good investment then. He said, yes.
Yeah, and what are we trying to build here, and how is education done in the past? There was a time when we had a gold standard, before fiat, and the university system is how higher education was done. And the way that it's always worked is you had universities that have a reputation, maybe some endowment, maybe some kind of accreditation, but basically a way to convince people that okay, you're going to spend $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 on this education, but you should trust us because we have a reputation. And I think it's I think there are people who are emerging in the Bitcoin space who are like this, I mean, from my experience, taking classes from both Jimmy and Lisa, I think it's been worth way more than every penny. Yeah, it's expensive. It could be hundreds or even thousands of dollars, but I mean, knowledge is power, and it's worth spending on. And if it's a bull market, you have a little extra, some extra sats. If you've been spending less than you earn, and you've been financially, wise, then put those extra sats towards your knowledge. There's basically nothing that you can invest in that's better than investing in yourself. Stack sats and stack knowledge.
So maybe knowledge can even overperform stats. That's all. So let's try to take some questions, maybe one if we have time.
Hi, thank you.
I was just wondering, there's all this knowledge, and clearly there's people interested in this knowledge, but I was wondering, how do you find the students and the users for these platforms, besides Twitter and other platforms? Have you found efficient ways to bring people to the classes and to the products?
Right, that's a good question. How do you find the students? So, for example, for this bootcamp that was here in Viareggio before, there was a startup, a wallet, that were basically looking for education, and we invited over some of the students of the Polytechnic of Turin and some of the students of 𝐒𝐵 Plus in El Salvador. The way we found students in El Salvador in the first place was mostly through a university, the Don Bosco University, that with the Bitcoin office and Mario was able to spread the knowledge to some of the students. So yeah, there's not an easy answer though. That's a very interesting question.
The question is really about marketing. How do you market yourself to get it? And I've kind of come around like to a different perspective after a while, because at least at the beginning, when you're starting out, you kind of have to market, right? How are you going to get your first customers, and how are you going to get people to pay you and stuff like that? And honestly, that was the part that led me to be so hesitant about like starting that course. Is anyone going to be interested in my product, and is anyone going to actually pay me or whatever? Turns out there was, and I got it mostly through Twitter, and I think that's the right way, right? Like, because the fiat model is to just sort of like blast everything, right? Just put it out there for everybody, and they do that because there's a significant need to scale. They need to get a large number of customers because that's the only way they're going to make a profit. They have giant staffs and so on. So, Bitcoin models, smaller company models, I think are very different. And it's okay to grow slowly. It's okay to grow by word of mouth and stuff like that. And that's mostly what I rely on. If I wanted to, I could like completely blast like every Bitcoin publication, spend a ton of money on Twitter ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff, and probably get more students, but I kind of don't want to. There's sort of like a limit. There's right now, at least, I'm restricted by the fact that it's me teaching, so I can't do that many, first of all, and I don't want it to scale. I don't want to sort of like dilute the product and debase the product, which every fiat company does. So, in a sense, like I think we have to go with sort of older models of marketing, which are based on word of mouth, reputation, stuff like that, rather than just blasting everybody with ads on YouTube or something.
Jimmy, you described the method of Bitcoin. We act locally. We go for us is we go inside the class and talk to the students, and that's it. So my key point is act locally, because locally is there the community and the students.
Yeah, I think it's kind of what like Jimmy said in the beginning, is that you need to figure out what is the need in the market, and two, when you do create a product that fills a need, it needs to be the best product, and it's going to sell itself. For the Voucher app, that's what we aim for, and we grew to 10,000 users in like less than 4 months, all organically, word of mouth. Bitcoin maxis, orange pulling their friends and family, because they knew that gamification is a way that these fiat, I guess, NPCs get information. So you have to make sure that what you are creating, there's an actual need for it, and what we do create is the best product.
Yeah. There's almost nothing more powerful than somebody saying, hey, I took this class and I got a huge amount of value from it, and it's worth every penny. That's how you get respected institutions of higher learning. And as for the gamification thing, I think there's a place for it, like at the widest part of the funnel, like the bottom of the funnel, because it's like almost no effort, and it's like so fun. It's like a dopamine hit. The people who are like not motivated at all, it's perfect for them.
I get a dopamine hit when my unit test coverage goes from 91 to 92%. I don't know about you.
Anyway, just to games are not just fiat. I mean, the reduction of everything to a game is fiat. But even traditional models, there was a lot of Goliath experience in university. I mean, even at the very top of Bitcoin technical education, which we should have something like the game we had yesterday night. It's still fun. So I think we are allowed to have fun under the Bitcoin standard. Let's see.
Yeah, it's just, you know, at some point on your hero journey, you go from playing a game that somebody else designed to playing the real world, right? And then at that point, it becomes a self-directed journey that nobody can really design for you. You're kind of designing it for yourself.
Yeah, that's also how kids grow up from playing to living. So yeah, on very philosophical notes, I think that we're over the time, right? So thank you very much to the panelists and thank you.